Okay. All right. Welcome, beautiful women. I I'm so delighted to have this call with you today. Really, Beth was saying earlier, the spotlight is yours. This is your opportunity to ask any questions. And Beth will talk a little bit more about the invitation of questions that she would love to help you sort out. And she is leading 3 of these calls over the course of the year. And then those of you that are in the Oracle Circle also will get access to additional Q&A calls with her through her group called Fellowship of the Pen. So those are gifted to you, and if you're not sure how to access those, you can ask us later, because you have that information already if you're part of the Oracle Circle. So, but otherwise, this is only happening a few times this year. So this is a very precious, precious call and precious time that we have with Beth to ask her anything. So I'll just formally introduce her and then pass the spotlight to Beth to kind of be in leadership on this call. I've known Beth for years. I want to say almost 15 years. Maybe like 12. And we just kind of clicked as soon as we met. And we've always had a very collaborative, seeking ways that we can partner and play together relationship. I love being in Sister Circle with Beth. She just has so much to contribute, not only with her amazing knowledge as an award-winning, best-selling author, multiply published, but also just as an incredible friend. So I feel very honored that she said yes to being part of the support team for the women in the circle. So Beth, I'll hand it to you to say anything else that you want to say about yourself, but so glad that you're here. And if we were live, we would give you a round of applause, but we're all just going to blow Beth a kiss of welcome. Mwah.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Jessica. This is so much fun to be with you all. Maybe just a little bit about me, my background. I write young adult adventure fantasy, also paranormal romance, and I'm now working on a science fiction mystery series. And here's my first book, Henrietta the Dragon Slayer. This is a young adult novel, first of 3. All 3 books are published. I'm an indie author, which means I self-publish. And I'm lucky to have an in-house designer who designed this cover, my husband, and who designs now all my covers. I'm also a nonfiction writer, so I can relate to all the nonfiction author questions. My business used to be helping both nonfiction writers and fiction writers, but in the last 5 years, I now only help fiction writers, just to be super niched, and it's my passion. But I want to share with you, this is my first print nonfiction book. This is the Writer's Adventure Guide. And this is a self-coaching guide to help writers get to know their writing process. And it is an actual workbook with wonderful empty spaces for you to write. And it takes the hero's journey, some of you may be familiar with the hero's journey, and relates it to the creative writing process. So I have my hands deeply in the writing process. I myself am currently editing a novel and also editing a nonfiction book based on my Plan Your Novel curriculum. So I'm right in the trenches alongside you and alongside all my clients and students. And this is my 24/7 passion, helping people bring their message out into the world in book format. That's my specialty. I love it. And I'm here for you to answer any questions that you have. I can even do little spiels on, where do you start? What's in the middle? What's at the end? and for everybody in the Oracle Circle, you have available all my marketing courses that I've created that are they're written for kind of the tender-hearted, maybe introverted soul who's looking for ways to be authentic in their marketing. And I bring people through step-by-step processes to do that, and build on what you know, and be creative and build out your marketing messages. So that's what I'm offering to the Oracle Circle, as well as these Q&A calls. So I'm here for you, and I would like to open it up for questions. Yes, Kat. Hi, nice to meet you.
Hi, Beth. Thank you so much for doing this call. I've been really looking forward to it.
Okay.
Um, the first question I had, which is, I like that there was a list, by the way, on the meetup. Thanks for all those prompts and ideas to you and Jessica. But the first question I had is, I'm also thinking about self-publishing. I have another acquaintance who's self-published, and I think she maybe had tried to get published by somebody else. And I'm curious, it sounds like there's some different trade-offs to each path. And I'm curious if you could talk a little bit about that and what was behind your decision to do it all yourself. Because that's where I'm
Sure.
leaning, but I want to
Okay.
understand more.
Yeah, that's a great question. Does anybody else also curious about the pros and cons? Yeah, great. So this is something I've actually even created a little report on some years ago, and maybe we can make that available, Jessica, to everybody. So essentially, a publisher is like a business investor into your book. They give you maybe they give you an advance, maybe they don't, and then they give you some royalties, anywhere from 8 to 10% or 20%, depending on how much of a seller they think you are. So they get to, because they're your business investor in your book, like HarperCollins or Random House, they decide everything. They have the final say on your cover, on editing, although the author does need to agree, on layout, on the marketing channels, on how it's marketed, on the back cover copy, everything. They really have a final say. Although in the contract, of course, the authors do have to approve it, but some things don't even get run by the author. I know some horror stories of how covers got messed up, and a woman had 3 arms or something. There's a funny, famous example in the romance industry of that. But that's the con. But the pro is they are your investor. They might have more deeper pockets. Most publishers, even a smaller publisher, will have probably deeper pockets than an individual. That depends. And one of the best things about a publisher is they have easy access into a wide distribution. So given if they believe in your book and they think it's going to be a bestseller, they're going to put it everywhere. Grocery stores, airports, all the big chains, of which there's only really Barnes and Noble, honestly, right now, which is kind of on rocky ground, and maybe some other models. And they may partner with foreign publishers, depending on your contract, may negotiate translation rights or audio rights or movie rights. But that's something that is negotiated in the contract. So they're huge, and they have a big, big reach. Now, not all publishers will actually push your book. I know several authors that I helped get published by helping them write query letters, which is the pitch letter to a publisher. They're with small presses, and the small press doesn't really do much. They have to actually push their book. They have to do the marketing and the outreach. There might be some support, like there's a marketing department and a publicity department. Maybe they'll do some things. So those authors coordinate and work with that small press. Because not all publishers are created equal. There's so many different kinds. So that's on the publishing side, on the traditional publishing side. On the self-publishing side, the pro is you get to decide everything. You're the master of the ship. It's your show. You get final say in every single piece, which is great for people who like to make their own decisions and be in charge of everything. The con is you also have to fund everything. So I actually had someone else design this cover. It wasn't my husband, because this was my very, very first book, print book, and I didn't know what I was doing. And it was so hard to figure out this cover. And today I probably would have designed it differently. Plus, I didn't think about it as an ebook, because it doesn't look very good as a small little, image on Amazon. I love it, the feel of it, but now I would make different design decisions. I really didn't know what I was doing. So when we're self-publishing, we don't necessarily know what we're doing. We do our best. You can hire designers, that costs money. You can hire editors, proofreaders. That's all out of our own pocket. Also, as an independent author, we don't have a wide distribution chain. It is not easy to get a book into Barnes & Noble or the airport kiosks, which is virtually impossible, unless there was, by miracle, some amazing, huge demand. We actually have to generate that demand. We have to generate the marketing, the publicity, and do, if we want our books in independent bookstores, we actually have to hit the pavement and try and build relationships. And I did a little bit. I actually had this book in 2 independent bookstores in Oakland for a little bit. It's a lot of work. And after they sold out, I was like, okay, that's it. I'm just going to so I decide being an independent author is great if you are doing speaking engagements, because you can bring your book with you and sell it right there, which is really satisfying and great for the attendees. So that is also my distribution model. I sell online and I sell when I speak. And I've just decided that's okay with me. I also give away books to libraries because that is very important to me. It's part of my values. So I had to make peace with what I could do. Now I want to tell you about a third publishing model. It's called hybrid publishing. It's used a few different ways, but hybrid publishing is specifically when you partner with somebody who has some of the expertise in-house. Maybe they have a cover designer, they have maybe editing, distribution, and a great example of this is She Writes Press. And I really like them. They're really ethical. I know Brooke Warner, the owner. She came from traditional publishing and felt stymied because a lot of her passion projects that she would want to acquire as an editor were shot down, and what they considered sellable was a very small niche. And then she finally went independent, created She Writes Press. And so there you're the investor in your book. You spend money, it's a few $1,000s, but then they're right there with you. They're partnering with you with distribution, also quality control. They don't let anybody in. And there are some support aspects, circles, I think, for the authors, access to Brooke Warner and things like that. And it's only for women who are writing, it's for women writers, She Writes Press. They do have another wing, I believe, that's for men as well, because they have their advocacy that they're doing. So that model, and there's a few others I know out there, they will help you, and they're kind of curating content, but you're still the investor, and it's kind of more of a partnership. And that she's really in the forefront, I think, of this hybrid publishing. There's a lot of also shysters out there who will just take your money, print your book and run. And they call themselves publishers, but really they're still kind of the old vanity press.
And I just wanted to jump in real quick for those of you in the Oracle Circle. We kind of support you in whatever direction you want to go. So like, for example, Beth, Jill, and Randy all know a lot about the process of, especially Jill and Randy, their specialty is selling your manuscript to a publisher. So we can give you support around that if that's the direction you want to go. And then FemTalks acts as, if you want to go in the self-publishing direction, we kind of are veering more into the hybrid version of what Beth is talking about, because included in what you've paid for the circle is printing, some distribution, and a few other things. I don't have the list right in front of me, but I'm happy to remind you of what your ISBN number, etc. So you can publish, and we'll walk you hand in hand through that process. And in your blueprint, Oracle ladies, you've already received your blueprint, is specifically geared for self-publishing, and it also gives you step-by-step the order you need to do things in, all the way through the self-publishing process. So it's all laid out for you, and I think if you just take one step at a time, self-publishing can be a great way to go, but we'll give you support whatever direction you want to go, because it doesn't, we don't take a cut of your sales or anything, so it doesn't impact me financially. Whichever direction you decide, we'll 100% support you.
That's actually a unique model, Jessica, what you're offering. That's really wonderful. Yeah.
Can I ask a clarifying question?
Yes.
Or like just to follow on to those 3 descriptions you just gave, Beth? Have you ever seen it happen where somebody self-publishes and then there's enough demand, or like it does well enough that then like a house is like, oh, like we want to scoop that up and like publish it so it gets to more, or like, I don't know what the right terminology is, but like where it gets picked up and then it gets distributed more, or they support it more?
Absolutely. Usually they essentially republish it because they want to put their packaging on it and their cover and everything. But yes, I haven't heard of anything like that in the fiction world lately, because a lot of my buddies are all very dedicated to self-publishing and chose it for a reason. And actually for that, especially the romance writers. There's nothing that traditional publishing can do that they can't do better, except print distribution is the only thing. And maybe translations, maybe. But for nonfiction, and even, well, a great example is The Martian. That was a blog project for him. And he then got so popular, he got picked up by a traditional publisher. So they basically repurposed his content. And then I know historically there's been several famous examples of, like that. And I have heard of a fiction novelist too who was indie publishing and then got picked up by a traditional publisher. And I think they didn't take her old projects, but they took her new projects and put them into big distribution. So it's kind of like sky's the limit. It can happen. And you're absolutely right. It's about popularity. It's like if they see you have a winning formula and you see that they offer something that you can't do already, even though you might be super successful at it, then it's a great idea to do that as a partnership. But really, you hold all the cards if you are in that case. Because I have a friend who kept the ebook rights, but negotiated to have the print rights given over to the traditional publisher for a time, and distribution, worldwide distribution. So, and I know a few other interesting deals like that were even more creative. Like you can be really creative if you're super successful and a traditional publisher says, hey, we want you. And you're like, let me see, what do you have that I can't do as well? And you really can negotiate to your benefit, to everyone's benefit. Yeah, I hope that helps. Yeah, good.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Sure, great question. Yes, Christy, hi. Let's see, you wanna unmute?
Yeah.
There you go.
So I'm curious about the actual nitty gritty of the writing. I have a friend who does some editing work, and she was talking about that she felt it was not a good idea to put your voice to paper, like to record, so that when you're talking, and then I've heard other groups that say, no, that's the fastest way to get your book right, is to tell your stories in audio and then have that transcribed. And that's one question. And then the second question has to do with how detailed do you suggest we do outline? Like I have my chapter headings and I know generally what stories go with each chapter, but is it also important to outline the chapters themselves before I actually put the words down?
Okay. Well, it really depends on, both of these kind of depend on your process. Let's take them one at a time. Let's talk about transcription. Have you had this process done for you where your talk was transcribed, or you just spoke into the recorder and had it transcribed? Have you done that?
Well, I discovered on YouTube, when you load up your YouTube, it gets transcribed. And so I've copied and pasted my transcribed.
Great.
So,
and have you tried to edit that yet?
no, I haven't gone through any detailed editing on it.
Okay. Spoken language is different than written language, right? That's why somebody might dissuade you from it, because there is a lot of work. But if you speak like it, knowing it will be a written product, you can control what you say. It's almost like you're dictating instead of just speaking. So if you, so on the one extreme, I have colleagues, fiction writers, who dictate their novels. They write detailed outlines and then they can just dictate it while they're taking a walk or in their office. And they are producing pretty close to final product. I mean, there's edits and stuff and transcription problems, but so if you speak like your end product, like written format, it'll be easier to transcribe. Having just done this myself I took a talk one of my speakers gave and I transcribed it and turned it into a book. There's a lot of work involved. But either way you go, there's work. But it is such a fast way to get content on the page, to get a rough draft.
Right.
Once you have a rough draft, great, you edit it. Yes, it may require more editing than if you just typed it, but it's a great way. I love it. I do it myself for my nonfiction articles. In 4 minutes, I have a 500-word article, and I use a dictation tool. to transcribe, and boom, I'm done.
You use which tools to transcribe?
I use this tool called Descript, and great, Jessica has 4 transcription services listed in the Wisdom Vault.
Okay.
I don't know, Jessica, do you have
Descript is one of them. Yeah.
Descript is new. I love it. It's my favorite tool right now. So I do recommend transcription, and I know a lot of nonfiction writers use dictation and transcription to get their first draft done. Then boom, it's you have something, and once you have something to edit, that's golden. You know, it's a great place to start. But before that, I think your question about outline really dovetails with it, because if you have an outline and you know, the important thing is you know what you want to say. So how detailed that outline is really up to you. If ask yourself, what is going to support my creativity? What is going to support my output? In nonfiction, I would err towards better outlines, more detailed outlines. It tends to help writers know exactly what they're going to say. So if that means listing out, you know, okay, what specific stories are you going to tell for each chapter, and what maybe exercises or what explanations you want to give for what ideas, that may be a really useful outline to have, so that when you speak into the audio, you know exactly where you're going. Because there's nothing worse than going, what am I talking about? And then have nothing to say or feel blocked. That's the benefit of having a detailed outline. Because an outline allows you to think through, it's almost like a mental rehearsal of what will go into the book. And whatever you can do to just make it easy. So you could just like look at your outline and then speak, you know. And some writers may want to outline their entire book, or some writers may want to outline each chapter and then work on that chapter. And then the next day come back and outline the next chapter. So you don't have to do it all at once. It really kind of depends on your focus and energy. Does that help, Christy?
Yes. I'm curious though, if you could speak a little bit more about, because I thought that if I would record the ideas of what I want to speak about in a chapter off the, you know, general outline, the reader will experience a more conversational experience of interacting with me as the author, versus if I do, I mean, it's curious to me, this difference between is the value of a conversational style of, so that the readers reading, they're like getting possibly the experience of being in conversation directly with me,
Okay. Yeah.
versus you know, this other style, which I would imagine is more technical in its paragraph structure, that the first sentence basically summarizes what the paragraph's about, and then you elaborate, and then the concluding sentence of the paragraph is the you know, the summary of the paragraph or something.
Right.
Very formatted.
Right, what we learned in 5th grade, right.
Yeah.
You do not have to follow those rules. Written, well, I would invite you to have this experience for yourself, to look at written, write it like you would, even if you don't transcribe it and you just straight write it without audio, you can still write in a conversational style. It's about your intent and who you're envisioning you're speaking to, right, your audience. So you could write out in prose format. So there I was sitting at the cafe when the guy walked in. Okay, I'm a romance writer. When the guy walked in, right, you can have a very conversational style in just going straight to writing. It's really about, it's voice, your voice. So bring your voice into it, be authentic, be today. And you bring up a good point. You know, we all learned paragraph structure or essay writing. You know, allow all of those lessons to exist. You know, they were useful then, but now you are here now, and you can develop your writing voice for your current audience. So I would say, if you feel stymied by those old rules, throw them out, because this is your book. This is your message. Yeah. You can write it in whatever style you want, whether you dictate it first or just start with the writing piece. So whatever, I get that you want to have that closeness, that intimacy with your audience. And so however you choose to get the words on the page, you know, bring that heartfelt conversation, you know. Does that help?
Yes. Yes. Thank you.
You're welcome.
It would inform, I think, which editor I get, because
Right.
one of my friends who's offered that, she's an English teacher, you know. And I got a feeling I would be up against that with her.
Be aware of that. I mean, if you tell people, you know, you do want to have an editor who respects your voice and respects your style and isn't trying to make you into something else, which people automatically do because we all have our own filters.
Yeah, I was shocked that find that out.
Yeah, even I have a cadre of early readers for my fiction, and somebody is always putting a comma after the word "so," because that's what Microsoft's grammar check is doing. I can tell because I can see it too, but it doesn't always mean it's right. And especially as a novelist, I can be creative with my language. And actually, as a nonfiction writer, you can be creative. The whole point is clarity, language for clarity, language for clear communication. So that means we break the rules sometimes of grammar. And those grammar rules, they're just conventions. They change over time. I like what you're saying, Ursula. Yes, conversational styles of writing are still different than the spoken word. Absolutely. Just for kicks, dictate or speak and have a conversation and then have that transcribed. You'll see how broken that is on the page with stops and starts compared to the way we expect prose on a page to be, even conversational prose. There is a difference between spoken language and written language. And it's maybe you don't believe it, but if you see it, if you like read a straight transcript versus even reading scripts. I'm working on scripts, and writing dialogue for scripts is not, it mimics the way we speak, but it isn't exactly the same. It's a verisimilitude, you know, it's like it, but it isn't it. Now we're getting into the nitty-gritty of language.
Yeah.
Great. I hope that helps you, Christy.
Yeah.
Oh, good. Good luck. Wonderful. Yes.
Who?
Go ahead, Marie.
Okay.
Go with you and then Karen.
I have a question about, I have a lot of knowledge I've gained from being in school and, layering and layering and layering additional information about the 5 elements in Chinese medicine and Taoism. And I'm at a point where a lot of it is integrated within me. It's a mush pile of like how I see the world, but I am somewhat concerned about attribution and documentation and copyright. And I mean, I know what copyright is. I went through college and know I need to source my stuff, but I feel like I feel like I could get myself pretty paranoid, and maybe that's a good thing. It's more of a like, how strictly should I hold myself? And have you ever talked to other people who are coming at things with this curiosity and concern?
Yeah, absolutely. You're right to be concerned. I am concerned whenever I write because I want to be properly attributed. If someone uses my material, I want them to attribute to me. So I take care to attribute to others. So is there anything in particular that you're afraid might be poaching other people's ideas that might not get attributed? Can you give me some specifics?
A lot of it is based on like the qualities of the 5 elements and personality styles and what does it mean. I mean, it's ancient knowledge. It's been around for 2,000 years. I've taken, I have a master's degree in this. I take CEUs. I'm going to be in a workshop. I mean, some of it's obvious. I'll be in a workshop later this month where I'll be kind of diving into that, and that'll be a very recent dip in where I'll feel like, oh, I really need to be careful. If I've learned anything there, I attribute to this person. Mm-hmm. But I just feel there's I don't know, there's so many books out there that I've read. Do I go through every one on my shelf and just Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like,
Well, who is your book for? Who's the end? Who's going to be reading your book?
I'm thinking of it as probably the general public, like a self-help, self-discovery type.
Yeah. Okay. So they're not going to be reading your book because they want to get a degree or their own certification. They're coming at it because they want to help themselves. So I'm thinking just you can. I know others who have done similar kinds of books where they're pulling information from this deep well of knowledge and history, and they'll attribute what is markedly like a quote, and then the rest are resources and references in the back of the book. And it's like, you're our filter. I'm the common person. You're teaching me. You're my first resource, and everything else is you're like a stand-in for the history. And you can there's a lot of different ways that you can attribute in your introduction. When you talk about yourself, you can talk about your history and your lineage and your own training and where it came from. And then throughout the book, the reader, what they care about is how you're helping them. They don't need to be bogged down by footnotes and attributions, right? It's not as important to them where the knowledge is coming from. But you know how to be respectful of the lineage and where all the knowledge comes from. And you can mention it where it feels appropriate and helpful to your reader. And the rest is like for more information. It's in the back of the book for those people who might want to study it more. But also you're doing the respectful thing and you're saying, you know, here's all of my 20 books on the topics that I pulled from consciously and unconsciously, you know, and remember the end experience. Remember your reader. How are they going to get your book and grok it and use it? And that's really kind of shaping how you're going to dip in and share where this knowledge came from. Because it would stop their healing experience if you're like, okay, wait, I got this information from over there, and right, that's not to their benefit. So I hear you wanting to be respectful for all that you received, and you can also run it by a literary lawyer at some point and say, hey, you know, am I within my rights? Because there's something called fair use, which I'm sure you're familiar with. Like in school, as a student, we're allowed to quote from books because it's fair use. And the fair use laws are it's hard to pin them down because they are kind of on a case-by-case basis. But if you took more than 2 sentences from a book and you didn't attribute it and you said it was yours, now you're probably starting to tread into copyright infringement. So I'm just going to stop there. Does that help?
it does. And then the only other clarifying scenario I would add is like, if I am in a spiritual tradition and I get a pearl and it's like, did I hear that? It's synthesized into my thoughts now, but it's a concept that was passed down. It's same thing. Attribute my teacher maybe at the end of okay.
Yeah, you might attribute the teacher, attribute the lineage, because you're right. This wisdom has been around for thousands of years, and I agree with that. Yeah.
I definitely agree with Marie's concern there, especially in the case where you might use a thought or make a suggestion that you just don't know someone else wrote a book about or something. And it's like, if you didn't know, like, of course we do our research, but if you reference something and someone's like, wow, that sounds really similar to something else, like, are they plagiarizing? I don't know. Like, that's a fear that I have too.
Yeah. Well, you can also, so you're going to write your book, but you're also going to have your book edited. And I highly recommend having early readers or beta readers, 10, 15 people who have kind of wide range of life experience. And some of those folks too can help you catch things. They're like, hey, wait a minute, I heard about this somewhere else. Or, oh, did you read such and such a book? I mean, you can always put into your text that you came up with this idea independently, but then discovered afterwards that somebody had written a book on it. And how cool is that, right? There is no way to know everything, but I use like a little team of readers for everything before I publish it, because I need sort of that group collective brain trust to catch these things that I couldn't have caught by myself. So you're not alone. Your books are really village efforts.
I wanted to jump in because I noticed that Peggy's hand was raised.
Yes, and I saw Karen too. Great. Shall we go with Peggy? let's see. Can you unmute yourself, Peggy?
There we go. Hi.
There we go. Hi.
Hi, Beth. I met you about 5 or 6 years ago in Oakland at
Oh.
a conference there, and since that time, I wrote my book, published my book, and so it's kind of like having a baby because you can look back. Now I know so much more about what I should have known about from the beginning, and so I have a plan. The book is satisfying to me. I didn't know that it would be. That is to say, after it's actually done and months later looking at it and see it still holds what it is you wanted to say, So that's great. But I am wanting to republish and repurpose the content because I do feel like it has some substantial information I really wanted to get out. And so I'm really enjoying this information. And I'd like also to see about, I find the biggest thing that I came to discover was writing the book is like one part of it, but then there's a huge part of it is how to get it out. So it's actually seen, so it's actually heard. So I did some speaking, and that I really loved because it gave me a chance to engage with the material. I really think that's one of the best things you can do for yourself. And but there's generating those speaking engagements, and that's quite a job in and of itself. So I think that if I had my dithers, if I could have it any way I wanted, I would go ahead, republish, repurpose the content, bring it up to the moment type of thing. And then would love for to have a traditional publisher, or she writes, he writes, she writes is definitely a place I'm interested in having contact. But I wondered about yourself in terms of the whole publicizing, getting it out. How does that work for you?
So it works, your book is nonfiction, right?
Nonfiction, yes.
Nonfiction. So in today's world, getting reviews is really important. And one of the ways to do that is to be a guest on a blog. So one of the things I've done and I'm doing and I've helped clients do is do blog tours. And so that means finding who are the influencers in your circle, in your field, who are already talking to your audience. They have a built-in readership. We're all excited about that topic. And querying them, writing a little email, that pitch letter that says, hey, I'm an expert in this topic and I see your blog is similar topic and I'd love to write a guest post or do a Q&A, or would you review my book, or all three. So I recommend authors do a coordinated effort where they try and get in multiple blogs around the same time over a month or 2 or 3 months, however is organic. And that way it's like doing like a publicity tour. Instead of going from bookstore to bookstore, you go from blog to blog. And that could also include podcasts, right? That can include Facebook Live appearances with, interviews. That could include anything that you can think of, YouTube channels, celebrities, that are in your field. I'm not into WhatsApp, or what's the other one? Can't even remember the other big channel that people love, depending on your audience. Like there's new technology channels that you could try. Yeah, that's what I can think of off the top of my head. And think about, where is your audience already? What are they? Do they watch certain YouTube shows or listen to certain podcasts? Do they go to certain blogs? So these are all online channels. Of course, you can do similarly, like you do speaking tours, but what about other locations you can speak at? Are there certain churches or synagogues or YMCAs or senior centers or women's circles or knitting circles, right? There's sort of the standard speaking circuit that we think of, but then maybe there's other kinds of circles that you could come to and be a part of. And these are all ways to generate the most important way to sell a book, which is word of mouth.
Word of mouth.
Word of mouth.
When you say to find or approach the leaders in the conversation that my book generates, how do you find them? I mean, I use Facebook quite a bit. I put in what's the word for it? I contribute to different sites at different times, that kind
Groups.
of. And
yeah.
we haven't found a person personalities within that
Well,
context.
can we do a little test case? What is the theme? What is the subject of your book?
Well, it's called Barefoot Frontrunners, Sex, Women, and Power. And it's about really the history of how women came to have the rights they have and where they are today, and the link between race and sex. And it's also a personal story.
I want to read it. Well, I can tell you one key influencer. I don't know if you subscribe to the New York Times Gender Letter. I just got today's edition. It's a column that you can go and subscribe to that talks about women's issues in all kinds of ways. So the woman who writes that column, I think she's in her 30s probably, like she's a key influencer, her and whoever her editor is, but she's the front of that. Forbes has a women's column, I believe. There's another magazine. I'm a feminist, and I'm working on stories that involve feminism. And so basically, what are all the major newspaper outlets doing around feminism? Because they are doing stuff. They have some really interesting columns. Those writers and whoever is their editor behind them, they are driving the conversation. They are the people you want to get in front of, who are already specializing in this commentary right now. And of course, it's super hot and super relevant. So I'd be curious who those journalists are.
Those are great suggestions. I mean, they're actually whole big fields I haven't even looked at. So this is very, very resourceful. Thank you so much.
Oh, you're so welcome. And I want to read your book. So I'm trying to understand the history of women's rights and feminism for this novel series I'm working on. So your book is source material.
I'd love to send you one.
Yeah. Reach out to me and we'll make that happen. I'd love to read that.
I also just wanted to say real quick that, part of the intention for this circle is that there are ultimately, between the Oracle Circle, the Envision Circle, and the Luminary Circle, there are about 50 circle members in the FemTalk circles. And some of these women have email lists of 2,000, 5,000, 10,000, 60,000 subscribers.
Wow.
So you can reach a vast network of women, thousands and thousands and thousands of women, through other women entrepreneurs who have email lists. And so when I think of my mentors and the ways that they promote their programs or their workshops or their intro events or their books, like think of Colin Rush and Charlotte Jacobs, when both of these women wrote their books, they connected with their business partners, their fellow entrepreneurs, and said, hey, will you email a link to my book out to your email list? And their books reached thousands of people.
Wow.
So that's another way to think about it, that your book is a project just like a workshop, and you can actually promote it in similar ways through tribal marketing. So stay in the conversation with me and with the circle around that, because this circle is a wealth of information. I'm a wealth of information around tribal marketing.
Thank you. That's really great.
Oh, I love that, Jessica. Thank you so much for bringing that up. Yes, the women in this circle and the surrounding women, they are leaders, and they are direct link to the women you want to speak to. And there's somebody else, I'm spacing on her name, who's coming out with a book very soon about, I actually read it and gave a blurb for it, about women's, how to stand up to basically verbal and emotional abuse for teens and college age girls, and adult women. I'm very excited about this book. So her community would be a great partner for your book and your community. For example, she's directly in women's empowerment. And then, even what Marie's doing, right? Marie's about health and wellness. That is directly connected also to women. And Christy, I don't know the topic of your book, but I know that you work with the Mother Mary energy, right? Very female. So maybe everyone here has a nice synergy with your topic and can introduce, or campaign for you in a direct or indirect way. So you could be very coordinated about it. You could decide to do something all around a certain holiday, or like March 8th or whatever date you choose, or you could do it throughout the year, every once in a while. Right? There's a lot of different ways you can be promoting. And as authors, promoting a book, often there's going to be periods of big activity and then periods of quiet, and also ways that you can always be finding ways to market your book.
Thank you.
You're welcome, Peggy.
I want to just take a moment, and then we'll answer Ursula and Karen's questions, and any other questions there might be, because we're slated to go, I don't know, when are we slated to go? Until 11:15, I think. Is that, Beth, is that what you have, or do you have 11:30?
I blocked off all the way to 12, but that's just because I didn't have anything to
Because you're awesome.
bump me out, to rush off to anything.
We'll end whenever it makes sense to end, but let's just take a moment to usually in our mastermind circles, we take a breath for each woman, and I haven't really been leading that here. So let's just take a moment to just take a collective breath and just drop back into your body and back into your breath and back into your heart. And it's just so, I've just really been in gratitude this morning, being able to sit here with you, and like questions I wouldn't have even thought to ask. So just feeling a lot of gratitude for these questions. And then the sharing of women, sharing wisdom. And let's just take one more deep breath together. Awesome, awesome, awesome. So I think Karen was next, and then Ursula, and anybody else. So Karen, you can unmute yourself.
On the cursor. Good morning. Thank you so much, everyone who's here. It's so nice to be focused and take this time to tap into the creative and writing process. Let's see. I'm curious. I've been working on a memoir that's a novel style memoir, and I have an outline, and I'm curious at this point if it would make sense to get, like I had the joy of reading it aloud, the first chapter aloud, to a few of the women in the circle on our writing retreat. And for my momentum, it felt really awesome to offer that. And then there's that other side that's like, do I need to wait until I have it all done to do more of querying friends to read it and getting some initial feedback? What's your experience, Beth, with the process and starting to engage others with my project?
That's such a great question. It really depends on what is pulling you forward, what is exciting to you. How much of the book is written?
It's hard to say. There's a lot written, and there's a lot that I'm still filling in to make it really follow a story arc. So
yeah.
It's been a long process.
That's totally fine. There's no one right way to do this. So something to ask yourself is, are you, I'm very calendar oriented personally. That helps me to go, okay, I'm turning in pages in 2 weeks to my early reader team. I'm going to hustle to do what I need to do that. Like I need that as to help me stay focused personally at various stages. So you may be at the stage where having to turn in or pages or show up to do a reading will motivate you through what may be kind of the second half, final bits of putting your book together. As long as it doesn't hinder your creative process. I've also had the experience of showing a rough draft that was very unpolished, and all I really needed was, great job, Beth, keep going. But I didn't need poke, ask, what about this? What about that? And I'm like, I don't know. Right. So sometimes we can be a little too raw, but sometimes we're like ready. We're like, I'm ready for feedback. Or you can tell your audience, just tell me 2 thumbs up, keep going, right? We can totally protect the work and protect our hearts and ask for the kind of feedback we need to help us do the next thing, which in your case sounds like completion of the first draft. So if it really jazzed you up and gave you so much food and heart connection to read pages out loud, maybe you could organize something on a regular basis to help you finalize those pieces and just have a loving, supportive audience who says, yay. And then you go back, to the writing. It really depends, like I said, on what is going to really keep you moving forward. Do you have any kind of deadline on this?
When I joined the Oracle Circle, I'm like, I'm going to be the first one to finish my book in December of 2018. And now I'm thinking my 50th birthday, February 2020.
Okay, sure, right? There's a maturation process in the writing of a story, whether of any kind. It's like you have to be ready for it. And if you're still in the stages of like developing the space to be ready, you can't rush it, Sometimes books.
It's very personal, obviously.
Yeah.
So there are aspects that I feel like, even having teenage sons, not that I expect them to read it, but where if there's more distance from the actual history that's being discussed, it will be easier for me to present it because it won't be as raw.
Well, yeah. So time is a factor, having distance from, because you are writing about your life. Yeah. And in that case, it could help you to have a safe container to maybe think about monthly goals, because you are giving yourself this longer time frame. You're like, okay, where would I like to be each month for the next 6 months, or for the length of, whatever cycle feels good for you. You don't even have to decide every month until 2020. You can just decide the next bit. And then when you get there, you can decide the next bit after that. Because it can be really overwhelming to the system. You're doing some deep creative work. And you don't need to bog yourself down with ambitious goals that quash you. You just want to find the right goals that just keep you feeling that you're moving forward. And there's a bit of a competitive energy, which is actually really wonderful. I use competitive energy all the time to get things done. That's kind of what I compete against the calendar, right? You use the calendar. It's a kind of competition. And also, you are in the circle. So it is nice to know how you want to measure yourself against others. It is. I fully admit I'm totally competitive about things. But then in the end, we have to find the right positive competition, right? That the wonderful sand that itches the pearl in the oyster helps it grow. But, right, we got to find that right balance, and make sure our attention is on our own process versus comparing ourselves to anybody else. Like the bane of all of our existences, I think.
I also wanted to say, Karen, that, part of the point of the mastermind circles themselves is that you're welcome to do like the reading that you did at the retreat. It was like less than 10 minutes. So it's possible. Sometimes we have like bigger circles and we're trying to get everyone masterminded, but if like every month or every other month you wanted to come and say, hey, I just wanted to get, read this and get thumbs up or whatever, that's also what the circle is for. And we've got circles to choose from pretty much every week of the year, virtual or live. So just wanted that reminder. That's what we're here for.
And I belong to a critique group. We meet every month and we're reading each other's pages every month. And it's so wonderful. We all love it. We meet in person on purpose. And so there's definitely a value to be cultivating this sort of long-term support group as you work on your book. Whoever it is, and maybe it's a different group of people every month, or maybe you have a few people that they get to see this precious work in progress, and it allows you to it's like workshopping, right? You get on stage and you're like, boom, here's what I have so far. And as you build a book, it can be very validating to be able to do that.
Do you know anything about the Squaw Valley Writers Conference?
Only that it has a good reputation. I've never gone, but I've heard good things about it. Yeah. Sure. Yeah, Ursula says, I had a critique group that met every other week for many years. It was amazing. Yes. Yeah, I've been with this group for, gosh, 10, 15 years. I don't know. And actually, in 20 years ago, I met my husband at a critique group that we were both a part of for a few years. It was wonderful. Yeah, great. Does that feel complete for you, Karen?
Yeah, that's really helpful. And thanks, Jessica, for piping in, because I wasn't thinking of those because I'm also working to build my business and so that I can support my writing life, essentially, because yeah.
Yep, right there with you.
Yeah.
Yeah, great. Wonderful.
Thank you.
Oh, you're so welcome. Yay.
Ursula, did you have a question? You may have asked one earlier and I'm just totally brain farting on it.
No, I didn't ask one yet. I have a little one. I mean, I've mostly just been absorbing and, taking in all the everything. But I remember, I don't know, several years ago, listening to someone else talking about publishing, and they were talking about and I just want to know, Beth, if this is something that you find to be true or not, or whatever in between. They're talking about, when you write a novel, that basically the novel is already written. They're expecting the novel to be written if you're shopping it to a big publisher. I'm talking about not indie publishing, but actually getting a traditional publisher of some sort. But that when you're writing a nonfiction, which is what I'm doing, that the opposite was, I don't know if it was preferred or expected, of having a really clear outline and maybe some of it written, but not the whole thing. And that just stuck in my head, so I figure I might as well ask so it doesn't stay there as something that's, I think, is true, but isn't necessarily.
Yeah, that's a good question. Is that what you're doing? Are you working on a nonfiction project? Yeah. Okay. So Randy Pizer, who's also one of the advisors here in this group, and Jill knows as well, but I believe Randy Pizer takes book proposals and pitches them to Book Expo. I believe she still does that. So she would be up to date with the expectations on the book proposal. It used to be it was the first 2 chapters, an outline, usually I believe a competitive analysis, like what are the other books out there that are similar to yours, and a demographic or a kind of a this is my audience for the book with all the numbers, and a short this is why I'm qualified to write this book. I've heard they've been getting shorter and shorter. So a 20, 25 page proposal, and that's all of this information. So maybe it's not 3 chapters, maybe it's just the first chapter with a detailed outline. Written, they do expect that chapter, that content to be written in the professional style and as polished as possible. And they really want to know, why is this book going to make them money, right? Yeah. It's a sales document. So that's what I've heard. Yes, you do not have to have the book written. You just have to have it thought through, outlined, in this small bit of prose. Yeah.
I guess, and thank you. And I will also check with Randy. I remember listening to another call with Randy. Mm-hmm. But it's funny because it's not that I actually want to have more of it written because of the way it's coming in my writing process. Mm-hmm. But I guess that could, I don't have to a book proposal. I could still have a chunk of it written, but I don't have to send, depending, maybe the book proposal would contain only whatever asked for. Mm-hmm. But I'm just trying to navigate my own very embodied writing process.
Yeah.
That it's, and not trying to squish it into something else, but how to work with the reality of, getting how it can get out there and not shooting myself in the foot with knowledge that I could have.
Right.
Yeah.
You may even want to write the whole thing because that's your process. Me too. It's like I have to know what something is. I have to create it, and
Yeah.
then I can pitch it. Then I can put it into the polished form that people expect or whatever. So it's totally all right. There's no that's just the pitch document, right? And you as the creative and with the holder of this wisdom is you can create it. Because who knows, what if in the best case scenario, someone comes back to you and says, oh, I really loved your pitch. Do you have the rest of the book?
Right.
And voila, right?
Right.
And or can I see the next 3 chapters or whatever? And so if you think about the best case scenario, and be better for ready for it. Yeah. Can I ask, what's your theme? What's your topic?
So it's the working title, no one's heard this before, you're all the first, is the Book of Lilith. And it's about both my own journey, but the teachings that have come through around embodiment, the fierce feminine, sexual empowerment, sovereignty, all this stuff. So like I've been a poet for the longest time, and then for a while it kind of like dropped off because there was a way that my voice needed to come through, not in the poetry. And now that's all coming, and now it's like kind of all coming through. So it'll be a mixture of, things that are, knitted together in a way that's coherent. But yeah. And so I'm just, because of that process, I'm just really aware of like, I want it to come through as like fast and easily and as possible, and it feels better. Probably, I think it's going to work better for me to let that come through as fast before I have a deadline, an external deadline, versus a traditional like, okay, now we have to have these chapters and this whatever, because it's this more like sort of spiral kind of process.
Sounds fabulous. Yeah. I want to read it already too. And it sounds like you really understand your own creative process and to really just continue to trust that and be in that. And I see that a lot with creative writers, and as being one, there's the cave time and the very protected creative time that's super individual and messy and whatever it is that needs to be protected. And when you're ready, then kind of turn and we face the world, and then we can present the polished pieces and the coherent messaging and all of that. And they really are 2 phases. And so to protect the creative phase is I'm very fierce about that. There is no rush. Protect the creative time and whatever that needs, the cauldron time, the feeding of the fire. That sounds so wonderful. We need as many representations and voices, I feel, in this field, and all the voices of the feminine in all their amazing ways. Yeah, that's wonderful.
Thanks. That's good. It's just sort of like, okay, it's just like bugging me, and I'm just wanting to say,
yeah, get it out of there. Focus on your own process. Yeah, that's great, Ursula. Oh, wonderful.
By the way, your hair looks super cute short. I haven't seen you in a while. It looks really cute.
Thank you. I just love it. Like,
yeah.
Short. I do admire long hair, and I, of course, had it long for many years. There's something about short hair. I don't worry about it. I don't, I don't brush it. I just go like this. Yeah. Jessica, there you are.
Ain't nobody got time for that.
That's right.
Long hair.
Did we get everyone? I think we did. How about you? Do you have any book questions?
I don't have any questions.
I think you need to write a book, doesn't it? Can I throw something out there, Jessica?
Yeah.
Have you, or do you have content, like say a book about creating tribal women's circles?
I actually did, like I keep a list in my, sorry, I'm actually in like a weird back spasm. I'm going to my chiropractor anyway later today, so good timing. Thanks, universe. But anyway, so that's why I was like stretching.
Oh, good.
Anyway, so it's like.
Sorry to put you on the spot.
Yeah, no. It's perfect. I'm noticing it's hard to take a big breath. So I feel like I'm pregnant. I'm like, oh, it's hard to take a full breath. So I do keep a running list of book ideas, and one of them is, like I think one of them I wanted to call Tribal Business, something like that, or at least have that be part of it, where it is really about tribal marketing and coming together as tribe. I also, at some point, would love to, more as just a passion project, although it could potentially turn into some kind of online course. I go together with an online course, something around, tribal entrepreneurship. That's what I have here. Something around like conscious co-parenting after divorce, because that's something I've done really, really well in creating an incredible co-parenting partnership and consciously unweaving our relationship. And so that's something that people don't always know about me, but I feel like it's something that is needed. The transmission is needed, and I take it for granted sometimes what I've created with my co-parenting sitch. So
those are both wonderful topics. I say 2 thumbs up to both of those.
Thank you.
But one at a time.
Yeah, thank you.
Well,
it looks like Christy's raising her hand.
Yes. Go ahead, Christy.
I'm just curious about the things that are trending, because I think my book is about something that's way out on the edge and very few are embracing. But Jessica, you might be able to speak to this as well, because for me, one of the social justice issues is bringing back the priestess, because I think that the fact that by the time we had the actions of the apostle, one of the apostles, I forget now which one, it'll come to me in a second, but he really instrumented the shutting down of all the temples. And so, the temple of Diana, which is the 7th wonder of the world, we see the remnants of it, but everybody forgets how incredible that temple was for women, and in celebrating women and allowing women to be honored, worshipped, adored. Just the whole model of the temple with the columns that are open, and you walk in to the spaciousness, and there's the oracle woman, there's the dancers, the temple dancers, there's the beautiful ritual of honor and respect to the goddess. And then all of that got shut down.
Do you have a question, Christy?
Well, the question is this trend of using the word priestess. Are you seeing this? Because I'm still finding that people are like, whoa, priestess. But are we seeing an opening? Or
I'll speak to this. One thing I actually have noticed that's really interesting to me is like pretty much all of the women entrepreneurs I know who've built their businesses to even like Charlotte Jacobs, Christina Rilo, as just a couple of examples. Pretty much every woman I've seen who has built their business to beyond 6 figures that I personally know has gone through some kind of priestess ordination. So I just want to say, among women leaders in the light worker communities and like holistic entrepreneur communities, I've just noticed that. I've been like, oh, there's something to that. And the other thing I'll say is that I noticed that some of my more spiritually oriented business kind of online ladies that I'm following, they're using the word light worker, where before I think there was like change maker was like a few years ago, that was the popular thing. because not everybody relates with priestess. Like when I have my women raise their hands at my events of who here identifies as being goddessy or priestessy, a lot of women raise their hands, but I think everyone raises their hands when I say light worker or visionary. So those are words that I'm noticing I'm using more in my marketing, depending on if it's my general list, if it's women who've specifically signed up for priestessy things, then I use the word priestess. So that's my 2 cents. That's my thoughts. Ursula has thoughts.
Yeah. So I think, Christy, what's at the heart of your question is something that, in my own way, I also, not necessarily with that specific word exactly, but the essence of it, like, how do I bring my work forward in a way that is deeply authentic and stand in my truth and the full energy of that transmission, and not flinch from being direct about whatever it is I need to be direct about, but also meeting people, like the reality of meeting people as well. And I don't think there's not a hard line in the sand around it, but it's like, for me, it's like, is it more important to use a specific word in an instance, or is it more important to accurately transmit the energy through language and presence that is the essence of whatever that thing is, right? So like for me, I personally call myself a witch pretty freely. I mean, you've all heard it, but I use it pretty freely. And that is aligned for me. I don't necessarily say to other women, you need to be a witch, but they are coming to me because they're drawn to that energy and that part of themselves. And like, that's a balance that I'm finding. Like, I'm not hiding about that. Just like you're clearly not hiding about being a priestess. Like, that's clearly what you're doing. So that's a balance for me. And it's ongoing and evolving, but that's where I've found, like, I'm clear about that, because that's really what I'm like, my soul is here to do, is to be really open and integrated with that. And the people who are coming are resonant on some level with that, even if they're not necessarily, even if that word still is triggering for them, they may not use it for themselves. Does that make some sense? Yeah.
And I can speak a little bit to the notion of trends. Well, the thing about trends is they change. So, and if priestess is true for you and holds weight, and that's where the juice is, then go for it. I mean, I just did a quick Google search, and you can do this too. Google is tracking everything, right? So I just typed in priestess training for today's world, and I got tons of stuff, including someone I know who I've circled with, and some other folks as well. And it is definitely a theme on the rise, like Jessica was saying. And for example, I've met, there's a priestess training for Jewish women now, and fascinating. I've met those ladies. So there is definitely a reclaiming of the powerful spiritual woman using that term. And I think in terms of, is it popular or not? Well, you could go and do the research into the keyword tools on Google and such, and Amazon and Facebook, and see how popular it is. But I wouldn't let what's trendy or not trendy stop you from writing, calling yourself that, or using that in your marketing, because that's what's true for you. That's, yeah. And is there a more authentic word? I don't know. But that sounds like it's at the center of your work. Yes, Kohenet, Ursula. Kat.
I have a follow-up question to that, since it seems to relate to the list of things that we could have talked to you about today. And one of them is like titling your book to maximize your sales potential, since we're talking about words and labels and titles and things like that. I'm curious if you could, I don't know, speak to that at all, because I similarly have thought about like word choices and like, like what will resonate with people as a title. Shorter ones, phrase ones, short ones that have a colon and a longer thing. Like, I'm curious, what you think about that.
Yeah, I'll touch on that. Although I think one of Jill and Randy also will touch on that, right, Jessica? But I'm not sure, actually. Christy, did I completely answer your question?
Yeah.
Your concern? Okay, great. So yeah, let's talk about titles, and then I should probably go in about 10 minutes because my body wants to get up and move. I've been sitting here for a while. So in terms of titles, that is kind of a trend as well. Title, if you go to the bookstore or go to Amazon, you'll notice that a lot of nonfiction books might have a short 1 or 2 word title, and then they'll have a subtitle that explains the core benefit of reading the book. And I see that trend has been in existence. Let's see, I've been in my position here about 12 years, and I've seen that trend pretty much be the same. So the first, the main title is catchy. It generates an immediate emotional hit, usually. Not in all cases, but often. And then the secondary title will tell us, oh, when we read this book, we're going to learn da 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 da, or or if it's like a memoir, like what Karen's doing, it might be a very interesting, evocative, short title, and then the description, the secondary title will be the life and times of a modern day priestess, or for example, and around. So your instincts are right on, and there's reasons for that, because in marketing has become, our attention spans have shortened. So it seems like our book titles have shortened, at least in the nonfiction world. In fiction, it's a different expectations a little bit. So does that help? That's kind of the short answer. And then there is processes and ways, and I'm not sure if anybody else has, I don't have any curriculum on this, but my husband has done this and could write up some curriculum on how he goes about analyzing, using his left brain and numbers to figure out what are the keywords that are trending? Where's the sweet spot? Where's the words and phrases that you can use that are both true to you, not overused, not underused, like no one's searching for them, but kind of the sweet spot where people are looking for it. And it's kind of an analytical puzzle to figure this out in the nonfiction area.
I know there's a tool that Amanda was talking about called Keywords Everywhere. And I haven't used it, but it helps you find keywords that exactly are that. They're not overused, they're not underused. So that could be interesting. I've never used it, so I don't know what it's like, but she thought it was pretty easy. So Keywords Everywhere is what it's called. And also, Beth, one of the courses that the Oracle women receive that's part of your training is your book branding course, and that might also lend some clarity to this kind of question.
Yes, the branding class is not specifically for titles, but it helps you come up with your 1-sentence author brand, which then can be shortened into like a tagline, which sometimes can be either part of your title, depending, right? If you're writing right in the pocket, you're writing about your core expertise. This is not, so this is a nonfiction book that I just published called Mastering Deep Point of View. And the subtitle is Simple Steps to Make Your Stories Irresistible to Your Readers. That's what people get. They get simple steps to make your story irresistible to your readers. That's what we're up to. Whereas Mastering Deep Point of View, it actually doesn't mean very much unless you're a fiction writer and you care. And you know actually already what deep point of view is. So we're tailoring it also to an audience that wasn't absolute beginners. And then we use you can use other phrasing like we have on the back cover. This powerful tool pulls readers into your story. So that's another benefit. And then also I have here a quick guide to a key writing craft. So again, we're telling people pieces about what is inside the book. So if you know what the benefits are of your book, they can be sprinkled throughout the back cover and the front cover and other aspects of the key marketing of the book. So because that's the information that will be in the book description and that Google will find and Amazon will find when people type in words that are important to them. So I hope that helps.
I noticed that Peggy has her hand up, so maybe this is the last question, and then we'll intend to end by 11:30. And then Peggy, stay on for a couple more minutes because you and I actually have a call coming up, so I need to just check in about that.
Okay, good. Thank you. Is my mute still? Yeah. Okay. Actually, I was just going to ask Beth to please send me her address so I could send the book to her and contact info. And actually just want to say what a rewarding conversation. Everything about this morning has been so fresh and felt really good. So I really appreciate it.
Thank you so much, Peggy. And thank you for your email. I will write you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Awesome, awesome. Well, Beth is part of our circles, and what I've been loving is that Beth has been coming to the lunches and the mastermind circles and the calls, so you can continue to glean her wisdom because she's part of this community. She's in the Facebook group, etc. So, and then those of you in the Oracle circle have other ways to connect with her through her courses, through her Teachable, etc. So, lots of layers of support continuously cocooning you and your book baby. And it's also nice to open up some of these calls like this one to the rest of the circle as well and support women in their process. So Beth, this has been super, super awesome. I love you so much. I feel so grateful to have you and your wisdom today. Just awesome, awesome.
Well, thank you so much, Jessica. And thank you everyone for your wonderful questions and also for the work that you're doing to bring your book out into the world. I just really believe that your message will impact so many people and those readers are waiting for you. So wonderful. And thank you so much. I look forward to our next call and to seeing you all in our networking circles and sister circles. So thank you so much.